It was supposed to be a normal Sunday drive. Nothing unusual. Just a mother, her 3 children, a warm spring day, and a short trip home through familiar streets. But fate doesn't always give warnings. No signs. No alarms. Sometimes, it just takes 12 seconds. 12 seconds. That's all it took. A heartbeat. A breath. A choice. At 112 miles per hour, a decision was made that could never be undone. In those 12 seconds, 4 lives would be stolen. A family would be shattered. A community, left grieving in stunned silence. What does it take to destroy so much? A momentary lapse? A reckless heartbeat? A light, run red without a second thought? How can a decision made in a single heartbeat cost an entire family their future? Renton, Washington. A place where families grow. Where neighbors know each other's names. A town not unlike countless others across America, built on community, routine, and the quiet assumption that tomorrow will look very much like today. Andrea Hudson was part of that rhythm. A 38-year-old mother, fiercely protective, endlessly loving, and proud of the life she had built with her children. Her daughters, Matilda Wilcoxon, age 13, and Eloise Wilcoxon, age 12, were bright, creative souls, just beginning to carve their place in the world. Her son, Boyd Buster Brown, also just 12, was quick to laugh, the kind of child whose energy filled every room he entered. They weren't in the wrong place at the wrong time. They weren't doing anything risky. They were simply living their lives. They had no way of knowing that somewhere nearby, another story was speeding toward them. Chase Daniel Jones was 19 years old. A teenager caught between the thrill of youth and the irreversible weight of adulthood. He wasn't a career criminal. He had no serious prior infractions. On paper, Chase looked like many young men his age, eager, impatient, chasing moments of excitement wherever he could find them. But that day, Chase made a choice that would ripple outward, devastating not only Andrea's family, but his own. This story isn't simple. It's not just about bad decisions or tragic consequences. It's about how one moment, just one, can split time into a before and an after. An irreversible fracture that leaves behind only questions and grief. Today we trace not just the crash, but the lives that came before it. We walk through the aftermath, the desperate search for justice, and the fight to make sure no other family faces what these families endured. We will remember the names lost too soon. We will examine the legal system that sought accountability. And we will ask ourselves the hardest question of all: what will it take to make sure this never happens again? This is the story of Chase Jones. The story of Andrea, Matilda, Eloise, and Buster. The story of a single reckless heartbeat, and the future it destroyed. What if one choice could cost you everything you love most? Before sirens, before headlines, before courtrooms and candles left on sidewalks, there were just people, living their lives, making plans, laughing, loving. Andrea Hudson was many things: a devoted mother, a fierce protector, a woman who had fought her way through hard chapters to create something stable and safe for her children. To her friends, she was a source of humor and strength. To her children, she was simply Mom, the one who made everything better no matter what. Matilda Wilcoxon, 13 years old, was growing into herself, bold, creative, a little stubborn, a lot brilliant. She loved to draw, her sketchbooks overflowing with imaginary worlds she dreamed of turning into comics one day. Her sister, Eloise Wilcoxon, just a year younger, was the quieter force, observant, thoughtful, with a heart too big for the world. She had a habit of leaving little notes for her family, messages of love tucked inside lunchboxes, pockets, even shoes. Boyd Buster Brown, their 12-year-old brother, was pure light in motion. His laugh was quick, contagious, a sound neighbors said you could hear echoing down the block. He loved baseball, comic books, and according to his best friend, was absolutely terrible at keeping secrets. 3 bright souls. A family anchored by love. Dreams just starting to take flight. And then, there was Chase Daniel Jones. 19 years old. Freshly out of high school. Still teetering between adolescence and adulthood. To those who knew him, Chase was friendly if a little restless. He loved fast cars, loud music, late nights. He wasn't bad. He wasn't even reckless most of the time. Just a teenager, like thousands of others. But he was impulsive, craving excitement. Sometimes, craving it a little too much. That day, Chase wasn't running from anything. He wasn't under the influence. He wasn't malicious. He was simply speeding. A moment's thrill. A foot a little too heavy on the gas pedal. A mind focused not on consequences, but on adrenaline. For Andrea and her children, it was just another Sunday afternoon. For Chase, it was just another drive to nowhere special. None of them could have known that their paths would collide, at precisely 2:14 p.m. What separates a tragic accident from an irreversible choice? March 19, 2024. A Tuesday afternoon in Auburn Springs. The kind of day that feels too ordinary to remember, until it becomes unforgettable. 2:07 p.m. Andrea Hudson loads her 3 children into their maroon SUV. They're headed to Matilda's art class. It's just a few miles down the road. The radio hums low. Matilda doodles absent-mindedly in her sketchpad. Buster argues over which fast food place they'll visit afterward. Eloise watches the clouds drift by. Meanwhile, across town, Chase Jones is running late. Not for anything important, just meeting friends at the local arcade. He's not in a bad mood. Not intoxicated. Just restless. Eager to get there faster. 2:11 p.m. Chase pulls onto Maple Grove Road, a wide, slightly sloping stretch of asphalt lined with oak trees and mailboxes. The speed limit reads 35 miles per hour. Chase punches the gas. The Charger roars forward. 55 miles per hour. 60. A thrill shoots through him, short-lived, shallow, but addictive. 2:12 p.m. Andrea makes a left turn onto Maple Grove. They are just 3 minutes from their destination. Neither sees the other yet. Trees and curves in the road shield them. 2 lives. 2 directions. 2 separate stories, rushing toward a collision they don't know is coming. 2:13 p.m. Chase crests the hill at 68 miles per hour. Andrea's SUV pulls into the lane ahead, normal, cautious, oblivious. Chase sees them half a second too late. He jerks the wheel. Tries to brake. The Charger hydroplanes slightly on the uneven road. There's no space. No time. The Charger slams into the rear driver's side of Andrea's SUV with catastrophic force. Metal screams against metal. Glass blooms outward in glittering clouds. The SUV flips once. Then again. It comes to a final rest on its roof, crumpled and smoking, 30 yards down the road. If you could rewind time by just 2 minutes, could you change fate? At 2:16 p.m., the first emergency call was placed. At 2:17 p.m., officers arrived on scene. At 2:21 p.m., Andrea Hudson was pronounced dead at the scene. Matilda and Eloise were transported to County General in critical condition. Buster Brown never made it out of the vehicle. Chase Jones staggered from his vehicle, dazed but alive. Blood on his forehead. Disbelief in his eyes. Neighbors would later say he sank to his knees in the grass, repeating the words, "I didn't mean to." The science of a crash is cold. Numbers, angles, calculations of force, friction, velocity. But the human experience of it, the moment, is something else entirely. A tearing. A ripping away of everything you thought was solid, safe, certain. Investigators would later determine Chase Jones was traveling at 68 miles per hour on Maple Grove Road, nearly double the posted limit. He was not racing anyone. Not evading police. No urgent emergency. Just speeding. Just feeling the rush. Just moving too fast toward a moment that could never be undone. Andrea Hudson entered the intersection after a full stop. No obstructions. No distractions. A careful, lawful turn. By the time she saw the black Charger barreling down on her, it was already too late. The impact was catastrophic. An assault of physics on flesh and bone. The point of contact, the rear driver's side quarter panel of Andrea's SUV, the most vulnerable spot. It crumpled inward instantly, folding metal like paper, transferring unimaginable force through the vehicle's frame. Inside, the world spun violently for Matilda, Eloise, and Buster. Seatbelts strained. Windows exploded. Time dilated into a soundless, shattering scream. In just under 3 seconds, Andrea's SUV flipped twice. The tires lost contact with the ground. Gravity turned cruel. Buster, only 5 years old, suffered the full brunt of the centrifugal forces. Andrea likely lost consciousness instantly from the initial blow. It's believed, mercifully, that she never felt the second roll. Matilda, clutching her sketchpad even in terror, would suffer traumatic brain injuries. Eloise's small frame was battered from every angle. And Chase Jones, emerged almost miraculously unscathed. A minor concussion. A few broken ribs. Scrapes and bruises that would heal long before the emotional scars would even begin to surface. An accident reconstructionist would later walk the scene. Every skid mark, every debris field, every fragment told the same relentless story. Speed, loss of control, impact, devastation. They calculated that even if Chase had been driving 15 miles per hour slower, even if he had simply taken his foot off the accelerator 200 feet earlier, the collision might have been survivable. A crumpled bumper. A broken arm maybe. A frightening day, but not the ending of 4 stories in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. Is a second of thrill ever worth a lifetime of regret? Chase sat slumped against the crumpled front fender of his car, bloodied, shaking, staring at what he had done. Neighbors held him back from rushing toward the wreckage of the Hudson family's SUV. One witness would later tell police he kept repeating the same broken phrase over and over. It was just a second, it was just a second, it was just a second. But seconds can destroy. Seconds can erase futures. Seconds can stain entire lives with pain so deep it has no words. The first 911 call was placed at 2:18 p.m. Within 3 minutes, sirens pierced the sleepy calm of Maple Grove Road. The first officer on scene, Officer Derek Halston, would later testify that he had never seen a crash so violent, so absolute, outside of a war zone. Andrea Hudson was found unresponsive behind the wheel. Emergency crews fought to resuscitate her. Chest compressions, oxygen masks, rapid fluid administration. Matilda and Eloise were extricated from the crumpled back seat with the jaws of life, hydraulic tools. Every second mattered. Every heartbeat was precious. Buster had no heartbeat. A paramedic tried anyway. 30 minutes of desperate CPR. A child's life clutched between life and death. But there are battles even the bravest hearts cannot win. Andrea was declared deceased at 3:04 p.m. 5-year-old Buster was pronounced at 3:12 p.m. Matilda and Eloise were stabilized, barely, and airlifted to St. Agnes Trauma Center 40 miles away. News spread faster than any official report. Neighbors flooded the scene, standing numbly at the edges, eyes wide, hands clutched over mouths. Some had heard the crash. Others had simply felt it, a seismic shift in the air, a ripple of something unnatural. At 6 p.m., a family friend posted a simple message on Facebook. Pray for the Hudsons. It's bad. Really bad. Within hours, that corner of Maple Grove became something sacred. Flowers, stuffed animals, cards soaked in tears. Andrea was a beloved elementary school art teacher. She wasn't just known, she was loved, cherished, trusted. Her smile had filled classrooms with light. Her patience had nurtured hundreds of little hands learning to hold pencils, brushes, hope. Matilda had just made the junior soccer team. Eloise, the baby of the family, had been learning to ride her bike without training wheels. Buster dreamed of being a firefighter just like the heroes who would one day try, and fail, to save him. When a family is shattered, how does a community piece itself back together? Pastor Raymond Ellis of Maple Grove Baptist Church organized a vigil 2 nights later. They expected a few dozen people. Instead, nearly 1,000 showed up, candles trembling in the cold spring breeze, songs and prayers rising up like fragile offerings. The mayor declared March 19th a day of remembrance, vowing that the names Hudson and Jones would not just be statistics, but lessons. Names spoken with reverence, with reflection, with warning. The school where Andrea taught held a moment of silence. Children who had once painted rainbows in her classroom now drew her picture in crayon memorials pinned up in the halls. Communities fracture after tragedy. They bleed. They weep. But somehow, impossibly, they also reach for one another. Neighbors delivered meals. Businesses raised money for funeral expenses. Counselors volunteered time for grieving children. Love, it turns out, can rise even from the wreckage. But beneath the casseroles and candles, a deeper wound festered. A question no vigil, no memorial, no prayer could erase. How could something so ordinary end so unspeakably? The wheels of justice turned slowly. Too slowly for the grieving, the broken, the left behind. Chase Jones was arrested the night of March 19, 2024, charged with 4 counts of vehicular homicide and 2 counts of vehicular assault. He was 23 years old. Hands cuffed behind his back, head bowed low, he stepped into a system as cold as the world he had shattered. Toxicology reports showed no alcohol. No drugs. Just reckless, lethal speed, 82 miles per hour in a 35 zone. Witnesses testified they saw his car weaving between lanes minutes before impact. No brakes were applied before the collision. No attempt to slow down. The courtroom was filled to the brim during the preliminary hearings. Andrea's parents sat in the front row, clutching tissues and photographs of their grandchildren. Across the aisle, Chase's mother wept silently into her hands, her son's orange jumpsuit a violent contrast against the polished oak surroundings. On September 6, 2024, Chase Jones accepted a plea agreement, guilty to all charges in exchange for a sentencing cap of 20 years. Prosecutors emphasized the importance of avoiding a painful trial for the victims' families. A trial that would have forced them to relive every horrific detail, every moment of loss, publicly. During sentencing, family members were given the floor. Their words, raw, searing, unforgettable, echoed through the chamber. Andrea's mother, Karen Hudson, approached the microphone clutching a framed photo of Andrea and her children, taken just a month before the crash. "You didn't just kill 4 people," she said, her voice breaking. "You killed futures. You killed birthdays we'll never celebrate. You killed graduations, weddings, Christmas mornings." Buster's father, separated from Andrea but still devoted, spoke too, voice hollowed by grief. "You stole my son's life, and the man he would have become. Can the law truly deliver justice for the lives we can never replace?" After hearing hours of victim impact statements, the judge spoke solemnly. He acknowledged Chase's remorse, his youth, his lack of prior criminal history. But he also acknowledged the magnitude of loss, a magnitude no apology could diminish. Chase Jones was sentenced to 17.5 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. He will serve every day of that sentence. No parole eligibility until 85% has been completed, a stipulation written to reflect the irreversible nature of his actions. At 24 years old, Chase Jones began a new chapter, one of confinement, guilt, and unrelenting memory. By the time he walks free again, the children he killed would have been adults, perhaps with families of their own. Instead, they remain forever frozen at the ages they last smiled, laughed, and lived. The law can hand down a sentence. It can impose years inside prison walls. But it cannot rebuild what was obliterated in an instant. True justice remains somewhere beyond human reach. In the wake of tragedy, some find solace in memory. Others find their purpose in action. Andrea's family and friends chose to act. While their hearts were still raw with grief, they began to channel their pain into something that could prevent others from experiencing the same horror. In the months following the crash, the Hudson family began to organize to speak out. They met with lawmakers, experts, and safety advocates. Their message was simple: we cannot let another family endure the same loss. Not again. Their goal was clear: to push for legislation that would mandate the installation of speed limiters in all vehicles, technology that could prevent speeding in critical moments, preventing another life from being stolen in an instant. This bill, now known as the BEAM Act, Be Aware, Eliminate Mistakes, was born from the heartache of Andrea's family, but it carries the hopes of so many others. The BEAM Act proposes that all new vehicles be equipped with speed limiters, devices designed to ensure that drivers cannot exceed safe speeds in residential areas, near schools, or at intersections where children might be playing. The act also calls for retrofitting older vehicles with this technology at an affordable cost, making it accessible to a wider population. It's a bold idea, one that could change the very fabric of how we drive. And it's a message that has been echoed by families who've suffered similar tragedies, calling for action before more lives are destroyed. When we say, never again, do we mean it? The BEAM Act is more than just a law. It's a testament to Andrea's family's resolve to take the devastation they experienced and forge it into a tool of protection for the future. But the battle is far from over. With the support of thousands of citizens and after months of lobbying, the BEAM Act began to gain traction. But just as with any movement born from tragedy, it was met with resistance. Opponents of the BEAM Act argue that speed limiters could infringe on personal freedom and may not be the solution to reckless driving. They say that technology cannot replace responsible driving or effective law enforcement. But Andrea's family and their supporters remain undeterred, knowing that every life saved is a life worth fighting for. Karen Hudson, Andrea's mother, stood in front of the cameras during a public rally, her voice unwavering as she said, "We're fighting for change because we believe that no parent should ever have to bury their child because of something so senseless. If we can stop just one family from feeling the pain we've felt, it will be worth it. Every fight, every tear, every loss." The BEAM Act may not be the final answer, but it's a step, a significant one toward changing the culture around driving safety. And Andrea's family remains dedicated to the cause, not just for their own peace of mind, but for the future of every child who deserves to grow up in a world where speed is no longer a weapon. It is easy to fall into despair, to think that nothing can change, that tragedy is an immutable part of life. But Andrea's family proves that change can happen, that one voice, one family, one movement can shift the tides of fate. And in the heartache left behind, there is a spark of hope, a reminder that even in loss, we can build a future where this never happens again. The story we've shared is not just one of tragedy, but also of love, loss, and the powerful pursuit of change. The lives of Andrea, Matilda, Eloise, and Buster were cut short in an instant, but their story is far from over. Their memory lives on, not just in the hearts of their loved ones, but in the movement sparked by their loss. A movement that demands we look at the way we drive, the way we protect our children, and the way we hold each other accountable. We will remember the joy they brought, the light they shared, and the love they gave. Andrea, Matilda, Eloise, and Buster, they will never be forgotten. But let's not forget the important lesson their story teaches us, that we hold the power to change the future, to prevent others from experiencing the heartbreak of a loss like this. Their legacy is the Beam Act. Their legacy is the hope that one day no family will have to endure such sorrow. And their legacy is all of us, as we work to protect those we love, to safeguard our children's futures, and to ensure that, through their story, we never forget the price of recklessness. If this story moved you, if it made you reflect on the importance of safety, responsibility, and the power of one voice, share it. Share their story, their names, and the lesson they have taught us all. Andrea, Matilda, Eloise, and Buster deserve to be remembered, and together, we can ensure their legacy is one of lasting change.